Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this IT governance webinar on ISO 27001 certification, compliance, and continuous improvement on a fast track basis. I'm Alan Calder. I'm the Chairman and Chief Executive of IT Governance. IT Governance is your single source for everything that can help you implement, manage, support, run IT governance, cyber risk management, and IT compliance. I've been in this industry for some 20 plus years, written a bunch of books, the first one of which was IT Governance, an International Guide to Data Security in ISO 27001, now coming up for its 8th edition, due out any time now. But I've written a lot of books on GDPR, privacy, a number of other management and cybersecurity frameworks. And IT Governance, the company which I set up some 20 years ago, is the market leader in ISO 27001 implementation and support. We have deep subject matter expertise, not just in me, but in our consultants, trainers, and a broader range of subject matter expertise, some 12,000 clients across all continents of the world, and a very comprehensive offering of ISO 27001 products and services. Clients come to us for help in terms of implementation, maintenance, support, what's coming next, simple issues around could be scoping, risk assessment, or whatever it is. And as you would expect, we have a huge range of certifications and accreditations. We have helped some 1,300 organizations prepare and maintain ISO 27001 compliance. We have a training arm which has trained some 15,000 people on ISO 27001 and related subjects. We're a Cyber Essentials certification body, and now something like 2,500 companies use our governance, risk, and compliance automation software. We talk about our expertise being deployed for your peace of mind. Today's webinar is going to cover preparing for ISO 27001 certification, choosing a certification body, developing a checklist for key requirements, some tips for successful audits and ISO 27001 compliance maintenance, streamlining with the fast track approach to implementation, some strategies around continuous improvement and threat adaptation, and then how CyberComply can support ongoing compliance and improvement. You'll all have noticed that you're on mute as you join the webinar. That's to try and deal with background noise and other interruptions. If you find that you have questions as we go through the webinar, please don't lose them. In your GoToWebinar bar, you'll find an icon which is for questions. If you click on that, you'll find you can type questions in there. Please do, as questions occur to you, please do type them into the question functionality. When we come to the end of the webinar, which will be probably 40 or 45 minutes or so from now, and I've gone through this pre-prepared subject, I'll then take whatever questions you've got. I'll share the question with the audience, and then to the best of my ability share the answers. So that's the plan. I'm going to share with you some, I hope, insights and valuable commentary and support around how to get ISO 27001 safely into place in your organization, and then any questions that you've got, and in all, maximum of an hour of your time this afternoon. So start with preparing for certification. Most organizations come to ISO 27001 because they've got a customer who says you need to get ISO 27001. Not all, but many. And the requirement is get an ISO 27001 certificate, and that would be nice and straightforward if you could just simply apply for a certificate and get it. But you can't. You actually have to be ISO 27001 compliant. And ISO 27001, as I'm sure you know, is a international management standard for best practice in terms of identifying information security risk and managing that information security risk on a continual basis. So you can think of an ISO 27001 certificate as being like a cybersecurity trust mark. It indicates that you do have and are managing information security, cybersecurity in accordance with international standards. You've been independently audited, and that helps you meet customer contract requirements, tends to be a key area, helps you therefore win additional business, simplifies contract qualifications and RFP, RFQ responses, although we increasingly see organizations go say, can you give us a copy of your 27001 certificate, and then can you answer a whole bunch of questions which they could answer themselves if they just had a look at your ISO 27001 certificate. So we still got to do quite a lot of education around upline customers to help them understand how to use ISO 27001 certificates when they get them. Demonstrates legal and regulatory compliance. So from a management assurance point of view, an ISO 27001 certificate is a way in which management can satisfy itself that it's meeting a broad range of personal data, cybersecurity, cyber resilience, and other legislation in a way that means that as a board and a management team, you're not just simply relying on people internally to tell you it's under control. It is an external audit, which serves the same kind of beneficial purpose as an external financial audit in terms of giving yourself and third parties assurance about the level of your cybersecurity. It meets increasingly stakeholder and employee assurance expectations, and of course, it's helping you as a management and as a board manage and mitigate cyber risk to reduce business disruptions and penalties. And if you just look at the news over the course of the last few days, the level of disruption, the extent to which attackers are able to take advantage of inadequate defenses in both small and large organizations continues to make headlines around the world. And increasingly, I say to people, if you think you can't afford ISO 27001, think about how you can possibly afford the consequences of not having ISO 27001. It's way more expensive in terms of loss of business, loss of customers, disruption to your business, loss of value, loss of support, and of course, all that comes after that in the way of fines as well. So it's a very key area for organizations. ISO 27001 is becoming as fundamentally important to all organizations as a financial audit. And so an ISO 27001 project should deliver, obviously, compliance with the mandatory requirements of ISO 27001. And we're talking about the 2022 version of the standard. Now came into force in October 2022. All organizations have to be compliant with the 2022 version if you already have a management system by October 2025. That's less than 18 months away. It also delivers compliance with applicable legal, regulatory, and contractual security related obligations, because clause 4.1 and 4.2 of ISO 27001 require you to identify those, and as part of your management system, having identified what you have to comply with, to demonstrate that you're complying with it. And of course, compliance with your own policies and procedures that you've selected within the information security management system to tackle the risks that you've identified. Compliance means full and consistent compliance, not just a bit of compliance today and then you let it fall over tomorrow. Because an ISO 27001 certificate is valid for 3 years, you have ongoing audits, surveillance audits from the certification body. So you've got to think of ISO 27001 certification as a journey, not a destination. So continual improvement is a requirement. I'm going to be talking about continual improvement later on in this webinar, but if you think about your ISO 27001 journey, you could virtually describe it as being about continually improving your cybersecurity posture from the point you start the project all the way through to certification and beyond. It's not something where you get 27001 certified and then worry about continual improvement. You're getting started with continual improvement right now. So that's quite a useful attitude and concept to instill in the project team from the outset. Continual improvement is how we build ISO 27001 certification. So certification is based on an information security management system with management committed to the achievement and maintenance of ISO 27001 from an informed perspective. In other words, we know what we're doing. We've committed resources to it. We are making sure that we're taking into account the full requirements of customers, stakeholders to deliver continual improvement to our information security, meeting our corporate information security objectives, mitigating business risks, and meeting all of our regulatory, legal, and industry mandated compliance requirements. It also means that you're going to run your own internal audit process, internal audit providing management with internal assurance as to the effectiveness of your processes, but also internal audit is a key driver of continual improvement. Certification, which is a two-stage process. Stage one is an assessment of your documentation to make sure it complies with ISO 27001, because of course management systems must be documented. And stage two is the actual audit of the organization, the examination by an external auditor, an independent third party, to make sure that your management system is being complied with inside the organization. And having successfully achieved certification with one or more non-conformances, which you will then remedy, then there will be continual assessment visits, CAVs, checkups, if you will, which happen on a regular basis through the 3 years leading then to your recertification audit. Certification is carried out by an independent certification body. So, one of the requirements for independent certification bodies is they may not give you any uh, um, guidance or support or consultancy help on how to implement a management system. The whole point about being independent is that they're not marking their own homework. So, an independent certification body will be accredited by an accreditation body such as UCAS, INAB in Ireland, DAX in Germany, COFRAC in France, ANAB in the United States, all of whom are members of the International Accreditation Forum. And the membership of the IAF means that all of the accreditation bodies recognize one another, and the certification bodies who are recognized by accreditation bodies certify against a standard which is recognized around the world. So if you have an ISO 27001 certificate, which is certified by DNV or Bureau Veritas or a UCAS accredited certification body, that certificate will be valid all around the world. You don't need to get one for France, another one for Germany, another one for Japan. You have one certificate which meets your requirements all around the world. How do you select a certification body? It's just a commercial assessment. You choose a certification body who's going to give you the right kind of price, who meets your cultural fit, who's competent, who have some understanding of your sector. If you're using a platform, they'll understand how to use the platform, because that's a fairly key element in bringing the cost down. This is a commercial choice. You want customer service, you want value added. So you simply make a choice, talk to 2 or 3 certification bodies, and find somebody who will meet your own specific commercial requirements. So that's the certificate. But as I said, the challenge with getting a certificate is that you first have to actually go about building a management system that complies with ISO 27001. So how do you do that? The management system is clauses 4 through 10. So you need obviously a copy of the standard. You buy one from IEC or from IT Governance or anybody that sells the standard. You're going to comply with the standard. You need a copy of it. Clauses 1, 2, and 3 are simply, if you like, meta clauses. They're clauses about the standard, so you can ignore them. What you've got to comply with are clauses 4 through 10. And clauses 4 through 10 are all mandatory. Everything that is set out in that are things you must do. And essentially what you must do in clause 5 is have an informed leadership, senior management who are committed to the management system. Under the direction of your leadership, you've got to identify and assess risks to the business that could be caused by compromises of information security. And you then got to look at how you deploy your decisions around the way you're going to control those risks in operational terms. You've got to look at how you're going to support that with training, with competent staff. You've got to work out how you're going to plan deployment of the management system. You've then got to put in place an ongoing performance evaluation and continued improvement set of activities, which ensures that your management system, within the context of your sector, your industry, your legal and regulatory requirements, delivers assurance that to all of the parties that I mentioned previously, that as an organization you are ISO 27001 compliant. There's a book you can read, 9 Steps to Success. We've identified over the years really 9 fundamental steps to getting ISO 27001. The book's now in the 3rd edition. You can buy the book and do it yourself. But essentially what the book is saying is that there are a number of basic steps to go through, and they start off with a project. ISO 27001 implementation is a business project. And so you need to set up a business project. You need a project leader. You need some team members on the project team. You need a project mandate, which sets out what you're trying to achieve, how long it's going to take you, what the budget is, what management support is, all of those logical project mandate things. You then, step 2, set up the project. You create Identify your information security objectives. What are we aiming to achieve as information security? Something we're putting in place in order to win more business, in order to reduce the number of cyber incidents we have. What are our overall objectives? Identify the objectives. You put together a plan. You identify the need for a risk register for the project. We'll talk about risk to information security, but a risk register, what's going to derail the project? Hey, nobody in the business cares about information security. That's a risk. Worthwhile identifying what will get in the way of achieving the project early on so that you can take appropriate steps in the project to deal with those. And then set out some high-level policies around rules and responsibilities. How are you going to determine them? What's continual improvement going to look like? That's kind of the plan, do, check, act cycle that you will keep coming across. And think about how you're going to communicate with the business and with stakeholders. So setting up the project is your second key step. The third is putting the first components of the information security management system itself into place. So choose a continual improvement methodology and apply it in the context of your ISMS. So plan what you're going to do it to check whether you're achieving the objectives you set out to achieve, and then take steps to close any gaps that remain. Create and approve a high-level information security management system policy between 2 and 4 A4 pages long. This is all digital, of course, but it's going to set out at a very high level what the organization hopes to achieve, what your core objectives are, maybe include some of the key definitions. And this is also the point at which you determine how you're going to document the management system, because it has to be documented. You want to set out to people what you want them to do, how you want them to do it, and how you're going to evaluate it. So typically an organization might have a 4-tier documentation structure, high-level policy, procedures which set out who's going to do what, where, and when, work instructions which set out precisely how that's going to be done, and then you have a set of records which collect information about how things were done. So logs are a good example of a record. Step 4, create the management framework itself. So you can see how you're 3 steps into a 9-step process, and you haven't really started focusing on information security other than creating an information security management policy. In other words, the start well is a key step towards finishing well. Step 4, create the management framework. How big and how complex is your management system going to be? How are you going to organize it? What's going to be within scope? Are you doing this for one business? Are you doing this for the entire group? Are you doing this for a division? You've got to work out what the scale is. And that also means you've got to think about what the scope of the management system is. Which of the services provided by partner organizations do you include? How do you narrow scope so that it's manageable, but how do you keep scope wide enough that you don't have to create very complex interfaces between what's in scope and what isn't in scope? So think about where you have information stored: physical infrastructure, digital files, cloud infrastructure, portable devices. All of those, if they are carrying information or information activity that you want to be part of the scope of the management system, you need to think about where they are so that you can draw the boundaries of the management system very clearly. Step 5 is what we call baseline security criteria. So you remember I mentioned that clause 4 requires you to identify the needs and expectations of interested parties. That's regulators, it's law, it's contracts you have with customers, maybe suppliers and partners. A number of those will set out specific requirements for you around information and data security. And those specific requirements, you will implement them. We call those the baseline security controls, because your baseline security criteria are the ones that you have to implement simply to meet your legal and regulatory obligations. You don't need to do a risk assessment to find out whether you need to implement those controls. The law says you must. So legal and regulatory requirements, those are your baseline security controls. You identify them, and you then move on and start thinking about where else are we likely to have vulnerabilities. And that takes you into your risk approach. So you need a risk management approach. You need to think about how are you going to assess those risks which you have to address over and above the risks which are already dealt with through your baseline security controls. So you need to build a risk assessment framework, identify risks, analyze them, evaluate them, which ones are more serious than others, and then select risk management options. For any risk that you've identified, you can put up with it. You can just simply go, okay, we'll live with that. You can palm it off on somebody else through insurance as one typical option. You can avoid it by saying we won't do that, it's far too risky, or you can apply a control, and a firewall, anti-malware, those are controls which you can apply to mitigate specific risks. Establish risk acceptance criteria. So those are the criteria which enables you to go, that's enough control, we don't need to put any more on that, or we're going to live with this risk. And risk acceptance criteria are some balance between likelihood of a risk transpiring and the impact on the organization if it does. And there will be some risks where the likelihood is extremely low, but the impact is very high. And you might, for instance, want to deal with those risks by taking out insurance. There are other risks where the likelihood is extremely high, but the impact's extremely low. So you might go, well, we'll just put a minimal control in place here because the impact's so small, we don't need to spend a lot of money on it, even though it happens quite often. So you've got to find a balance, because the balance between likelihood and impact is what enables you to make cost-effective decisions about which controls to put in place. And the risk acceptance criteria are your formal method for doing that, for going, okay, this risk we'll live with, this control is enough, it brings our risk down to an acceptable level. Risk management frameworks are best dealt with through a risk management tool that's pre-designed to follow one of the ISO 27000 standards, that's ISO 27005, which is the risk management methodology, which is perfect for ISO 27001. The controls you select, you typically select from Annex A of ISO 27001. It's a list of just under 100 controls. The detail of how to implement them is contained in ISO 27002, but Annex A is a list of controls. And what you do with Annex A is you go through it and you identify which of the controls you are implementing, and for each of the controls you provide a justification. It might be business requirement, legal requirement, risk assessment. It doesn't have to be very wordy. And you determine whether the control, having been selected, has been implemented or is still to be implemented. And all of that information is captured in your statement of applicability. The statement of applicability, once the management system is complete, is a version controlled document. It's going to be referenced on your ISO 27001 certificate, and is going to be something which, when someone asks for a certificate, you're also going to provide them a copy of your referenced statement of applicability. So remember, you're not exposing yourself here, you're just providing a list of the controls that you've selected, and you can add other controls other than the ones which are already in Annex A. You can add whichever ones that you feel necessary. You're just providing a list of controls and saying whether you implement them or not, telling a reader where, how, in what depth, so you're not exposing yourself at all. Step 7 is to implement the controls you've selected. A number of them already will be in place. Remember, I said ISO 27001, in a sense, is a continued improvement project rather than a implement from scratch project. So you're going to, where you've already got controls, you're going to say, fine, these are working properly, make sure our documentation is complete for those. You might have to build additional security controls or deploy additional hardware or software to meet the control requirements you've identified through your risk assessment or even through your baseline security criteria. You need to make sure that your staff are all appropriately trained. Your staff are on the front line of cybersecurity because your staff people are the weakest link. From a cyber criminal's point of view, exploiting the tendency of human beings to be interested in what's going on, to be inquisitive, to not pay attention, to be bullied, any one of those things is one of the things cyber criminals are really good at. And they do that through their use of telephone, text message, voice message, SMSs, emails, QR codes. They're all designed to get somebody not paying proper attention to click on something, and that click is what will download malware into the system. So you need to train staff not only how to interact with the controls you put in place, but how themselves to be a control. And that ongoing staff awareness training is a critical component of your frontline information security. So ongoing staff awareness training on a month in, month out basis with regular tests. Some organizations will take it further by running simulated phishing exercises, for instance, to make sure that the training is really being paid attention to, and that can drive real improvements in people's awareness. You also need to have competence. So it's not just awareness of information security risk. The people doing the information security risk assessment need to be trained in how to do an ISO 27005 or other risk assessment. You need people trained in how to monitor deployment of controls, how to ensure that controls are being effective. You need to be able to run phishing tests. You need to be able to do penetration tests. There's a whole range of competences that you need, which you're either going to have inside the organization, so you'll have people trained and certificated, or you'll outsource and contract in outsiders who can do that. And you want to make sure that they continue to be appropriately certificated to do the work. You'll also need internal and external auditors. Your internal audits can be outsourced. You can have an outsourced company coming and doing the internal audit for you, but part of the requirement of ISO 27001 is an internal audit program. It needs to run on an ongoing annual basis. You need to cover the whole of the management system and all of the controls, and that audit report becomes part of the annual management review. That's step 7, implementation. Step 8 is the measuring, monitoring, and reviewing of the management system. Is the management system delivering what we want it to do? So that means you need to have a regular management review, at least annually. You want to make sure that the project mandate objectives that you set right at the beginning are reflected in management review. Are we achieving what the project set out to do? Are we achieving our information security objectives? How do we measure our progress? What are our measures we're using, qualitative or quantitative measures, or some mix of them, depending on the control? What are we finding out through our internal audits, through our penetration tests, through our review of logs, and how are we taking that assembled information and feeding that into the management review to identify ways in which we can further improve the effectiveness of the management system? So ISO 27001 is interested in, from a continual improvement point of view, improving effectiveness, not just working better as a management system. And improving effectiveness means doing a better job at achieving your information security objectives. And remember, information security objectives need to be quite flexible, recognizing the fast-changing nature of the threat environment, the fast-changing attack vectors of bad actors. So your objectives need to be written in a way that means that you are continually focused on how the management system becomes more and more effective at dealing with things that it might not have imagined having to deal with 2 years ago. Key bit of how you think about continual improvement in your management system. So step 8, measure, monitor, and review. And finally, step 9, audits and certification. External audit. You prepare for an external audit. If you've done all the things that I've been talking about, your external audit is going to be basically a walk in the park. External auditors are going to want to look at your documentation. That's the stage 1 audits. They're going to want to look at your risk assessment and identify what your biggest risks are. They're going to be interested in what controls you select. And they're going to be interested in how well those controls are working. They're going to want to see evidence of management commitment to the ISMS. They're going to want to see progress towards achieving the management system objectives. So they'll look at the minutes from your most recent management review. They'll look at what was found through your internal audits. They'll look at how all of that's been captured in your continual improvement log, and what data there is in your continual improvement log about the progress you've made in dealing with all of those. External auditors, if they're paying attention, if they're doing a good job, should find some non-conformances. If you are perfect, that's worrying. It means that there's something you're missing, because the reality is that cyber risk is a many-faceted challenge, and you want your external auditors to find some non-conformances, because it proves they're making a proper effort. They're trying to find holes. They're part of your continual improvement process, and whatever they find, their non-conformances will go onto your continual improvement log, and you will deal with closing them out as part of your ongoing continual improvement process. And that will be part of your life from there on, dealing with internal audit, external audit, continual improvement log, fixing them, in other words, remediating, and then driving on. So, successful audits, they're critical. Many people think of audits as being like a kind of pro forma activity that you've got to do, but actually internal audits are one of the key ways that management can make sure that the management system is genuinely doing what they want it to be doing. Internal auditors properly trained, properly experienced, who can evaluate the effectiveness of the management system. They can look at compliance with ISO 27001, help identify areas for improvement. All of that is a key contributor to the overall growth and improvement in your management system. And internal audits, with some of the other elements I've talked about previously, all go into your management review. And management review should be more than, again, just simply a paper exercise. It's an opportunity for senior management to say, well, what were we trying to achieve when we set out on this ISMS journey? What is working and what isn't working? If one of our objectives was to reduce the amount of time that we spend on filling in RFP, RFQ reports, and we're providing our certificate, but still filling in security information gathering questionnaires. Well, we need to find a process for dealing with that so that we can reduce that workload, because it's getting silly. Management review is one of the places where management and the ISO 27001 implementation maintenance team should interact, talking about the ways in which ISO 27001 is delivering on the corporate objectives. External auditors, if you look at them as entities whose job it is to deliver value, if you want them not simply to go through the motions, but actually to tell you what they're finding in auditing other organizations, issues they're coming across, to talk about the ways in which they've seen some organizations improve their life. That's not consultancy, that's just sharing feedback. Those are all really good things for you to do there. Vital insights that can help you maintain and build a strong ISMS. Because remember, even if you started down the route towards ISO 27001 in order to satisfy one or more clients, actually it becomes part of what makes your organization one of the survivors. And so continuing to draw in good practice, useful information is a way to help the organization continue, grow, and develop. So as I said, the ISO 27001 certification audit is really only going to take place once you fundamentally know you're ready. And bear in mind, from a planning point of view, typically there is a gap of between 4 and 6 weeks between the stage 1 and stage 2 audits. And some certification bodies might require 3 to 4 months to prepare to slot you in for an audit. Because October 2025 is the deadline for existing organizations to transition their management systems to ISO 27001 2022, and because there are some 75,000 organizations with a 2013 certificate, there's going to be a huge crush, probably from this summer all the way through to October 2025, of organizations getting their certifications in. So if you're planning to get certified in that period, you're well advised to put together a plan which means that you can book the audit sooner rather than later. And sooner rather than later means, of course, having some real certainty over what your implementation timetable looks like, because you need to be properly ready, in other words, fully implemented, internal audit complete, management review complete, by the time the on-site audit starts. You could have a bit of an overlap where your documentation is complete, it's gone off to certification body, but you're still running internal audit and management review in the interim between stage 1 and stage 2 audit. As long as by stage 2 audit takes place, your management system is clearly working, all of the elements are in place, you're in the place you need to be to have a reasonable prospect of successful outcome. It's not enough. Your certification body will tell you that this is just the start. You're typically going to enter into a 3-year contract with a CB. They're going to expect you to be continually testing and reviewing risks. One of the requirements is that you should be reviewing your risk assessment at least annually, certainly whenever there are any major changes in the management system. Your documentation should be kept up to date. If you change your processes and the way you do things, you should update the documentation to reflect it. You should continue using ISO 27001 to enhance your reputation. Management should continue to be informed, play a key role, lead by example. Your regular management review should be a live, active method of dealing with information security. In IT governance, the way we deal with that is we have a weekly compliance and security review, which is attended by executive members of the board and several other key people. And so we review management information and performance on a weekly basis. And we have a formal once-a-year big sit-down which covers off all of the information gathered across the year. But it means that our ISMS is continually evolving and effectively. It means we stay on top of corrective actions, and we're always focused on how information security staff awareness is playing out across the organization. Fast Track is a methodology which we originated to help organizations who, faced with the I need ISO 27001 yesterday, look for a way of getting there, but they don't necessarily have the expertise. ISO 27001 fast track implementation is a methodology which is uh, designed as a fixed price approach to implementation. It combines a platform with expertise. It enables you to budget in a transparent way for implementation. It enables you to get implemented very quickly, drawing on a platform that leaves no room for error, but which draws on expertise in terms of understanding what it is you need to do and understanding how to deploy it and roll it out. Internal audit support can do your internal audits, can prepare your management review, and from ISO, from the IT governance fast track, doing all of that, following the fast track methodology means that you can get a guarantee that you'll pass your ISO 27001 certificate first time. And we have many customers who come to us for a fast track because one of the benefits is that certificate saying that they're guaranteed to pass ISO 27001 certification, which can go to a client and say, we haven't got it yet, but we will. Here's IT governance certificate of guarantee that what they will help us do is so good that they're sure it will get certification. If you're doing it yourself, of course, that's the plan. We looked at the key elements. So I've slightly restructured it here. Senior management support, develop a project plan, do a gap analysis. What are the holes? What have you got to do? Get everybody involved in the business, create policies and procedures, do your risk management, get continued improvement working. A lot of activity to put together yourself. Traditional DIY approach. Many organizations go, how hard can it be to implement ISO 27001? Well, it can be hard. If, on the other hand, you come to the fast track service, we basically do most of that stuff. So taking that 9-step approach, we basically do 8 of the 9 steps. Implementation, we can't do that much of because this is where we've got to help you implement processes and policies into your organization. You've got to make sure people do the staff training. You've got to make sure people acquire competences. But otherwise, the other 8 steps, we fundamentally do all of those for you. You provide input because it's got to be done right, but because we're doing it, and because we're expert, and because we're using a platform, we can develop it, we can do it extremely quickly. So assuming you already have a basic level of cybersecurity, you can pull together the key information which we need around what your objectives are, information about assets, legal, regulatory compliance, and so on. You provide the implementation data, the information that we need. We can then craft everything else that you need so that you can deploy your resources on the implementing and monitoring of security controls. We can look after certification and certification audits, and you're pretty well there. For an organization with maybe 150 to 250 employees, doing it yourself will typically take 18 months to get ISO 27001 ready. And that's because it really does take time. If you've not done it before, to acquire skills and knowledge, to make mistakes, to go down rabbit holes, to fix it up, to try again. Bringing in 1 or 2 people who know what they're doing, but still doing it essentially yourself, likely to cut the timeline down to maybe a year. Using CyberComply, which is an automation platform, you probably bring it down to maybe 6 months. Using our fast track methodology, you bring it down to probably around about 2 months, maybe slightly quicker than that, because the platform and the fast track methodology is designed to take your information, implement it into a solid, can't get it wrong platform. We can help you be ISO 27001 certification ready in virtually no time at all. It's a cloud-based platform, is CyberComply. It's built out of our own 20 years of expertise with ISO 27001. It's got everything that our customers and our consultants tell us are needed to achieve and maintain robust, solid ISO 27001 management system. No room for error, lots of room for time saving, efficiency, and results. So if you're going down this route, as I said, continual improvement becomes one of your key areas of focus. The plan, do, check, act cycle of continual improvement is the most common. There are other processes you can use, but plan, do, check, act is the most widely used methodology for deriving from all your experience of implementing and managing an ISMS the ways in which you could do it better, learning from cybersecurity incidents, learning from new partners. All of those drive improvements. Continually improving your risk assessment, how you manage risks, identifying new risks, building those into your risk management process, another key component of continual improvement. And of course, employee involvement is often overlooked. I've talked about the need for employees to be on the front line in terms of preventing cyber attacks. So all of that staff training and awareness is critical. But employees are also on the front line in terms of identifying risks that you have maybe not spotted, identifying new ways in which you might deal with risk, identifying new requirements that customers might have. So those three are key elements in your continual improvement strategy. CyberComply, I've mentioned, is a cloud-based platform. It automates risk assessment. It automates ISO 27001 document generation. It gives you a very cost-effective management system. You get GDPR integration all at the same price. You get a number of other management standards all at the same price. Because for most organizations in EU and the UK, GDPR compliance is a regulatory requirement. So the information security aspects of GDPR have to be addressed through ISO 27001. CyberComply also enables you to map your Annex A controls to other standards and frameworks, which might be HIPAA, might be ISO 27017 or 18, 27701, could be any one of a number of different standards. CyberComply out of the box enables you to do that in a very straightforward way. It's got a streamlined incident tracking and collaboration tool, which can integrate with your help desk so that cyber incidents can get pushed straight into the incident manager, escalated in a way that needs to be, that you need it escalated, triage, all of the audit records, everything you need is captured automatically. So not only do you meet regulatory requirements in terms of reporting and managing incidents, but you can also do the learning that you need to do from incidents. It's got an intuitive real-time dashboard. So CyberComply is a tool that automates, simplifies, and makes management of information security a really straightforward, cost-effective, value-adding service inside the organization. Because it helps you build confidentiality, integrity, and availability in a way that balances it, because they're all key elements of ISO 27001. They're all three of them key elements of both cyber and privacy risk. CyberComply also enables you to drive cyber defense in depth. And you read articles about organizations who have had to switch off their entire network. There's a motor company that has dealerships all around the UK, currently unable to do anything at the moment. They switched off their entire network because it's the only way to stop the ransomware spreading. It's an organization that didn't build defense in depth. Defense in depth recognizes the likelihood, for instance, of ransomware spreading and thinks about how do we identify attacks, how do we protect ourselves from them, how do we detect them when they come in, how do we respond, how do we recover. All of that should be pre-built, tested, and capable of working. And CyberComply is a tool which, because it works with Annex A controls, those 5 attributes, identify, protect, detect, respond, recover, are one of the methods of classifying ISO 27002 controls. Cyber defense in depth is one of the key benefits of CyberComply, which, as you can see on the right-hand side, is a global GRC cybersecurity and privacy compliance ecosystem covering a huge range of standards and frameworks, which inevitably go beyond simply information security and pick up other management standards, all of which organizations tend to want to see integrated, and which are enable you to draw on in a vertically integrated way the whole range of services that as an organization you need at different points in terms of dealing with and ensuring information security on a continually improving environment. Customers love it. CyberComply is deployed by people like the NHS, Pizza Express, Domino's, Virgin, the Open University, and you can see some customer comments there. So do go onto the IT Governance CyberComply page, have a look at the product. You can go on some demos. There's a whole lot of free information, but have a look at how CyberComply can hugely improve the way in which you not only achieve but maintain ISO 27001 compliance. And it's the maintenance element where CyberComply really has its long-run value-adding benefit, because it means that everything is in a robust, solid environment where if you have staff turnover, there is a management system which you know works in a way that everybody can be trained to use. If you're thinking about not implementing ISO 27001 but transitioning, IT Governance can help there as well. We have a ISO 27001 2022 suite of training courses, lead implementer, lead auditor. You can transition an earlier certification. So if you have a lead implementer, lead auditor certification against the 2013 standard, you can do a one-day transition course with a transition exam, and you can update your certificates to be a 2022 certificate. So there are a number of ways in which ISO 27001 organizations can, either existing or aspiring organizations, can draw on our 20 years of expertise to help you achieve a management system which is genuinely value adding for the organization. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings me, as I said, around about 45 minutes to the end of what I was planning to say. So this is the point where if you have questions, please do, if you haven't already, type them um, into the question function in the GoToWebinar ribbon. There is a small icon with a question mark in it. That's the question box. If you open it, click on it, open it, you can type questions into it. I'll give you a couple of minutes to type any questions, and then I'll pick out the questions as you want them, and I'll share the question and the answer with you. So let me just give you a moment to do that while I duplicate my voice box. Can internal audits be done internally, or do you have to outsource an internal auditor? It's entirely up to you is the answer to that. Internal audits are envisaged by the by ISO 27001 as being done internally. So if you're going to do them internally, you need to have an internal auditor, somebody who has a lead audit certificate, who's competent to be a lead auditor. You might need one or two people who have internal audit certificates. You need an audit plan, which is designed to ensure that across the course of a 12-month period, you audit the whole of the management system, and then do it again the year after, and then do it again the year after that. So absolutely, you can do internal audit yourself. Many organizations that have a significant audit function or compliance function will do exactly that. Other organizations will, because it's a challenge to maintain a properly competence and certificate audit function, will outsource it and will have internal audits done by an external organization. IT governance, we do both with clients. We help a number of clients train and develop their own internal audit teams, and they manage their own internal audits quite normally. And for other clients, we are their internal auditors, and we send an internal auditor or internal audit team, as the case may be, to conduct an audit. We have some clients who we audit them on a global basis because it's a more effective way for them to manage the cost, if you like, of audits across multiple subsidiaries and offices, is to have a single auditor who understands how to do these audits going around and doing them. So it's a commercial choice is the simple answer. Internal audits can be done internally or externally exactly as is appropriate for your own organization. So that's the first question. Other questions, if you put them into the question functionality, please do that. You don't have to ask any questions. Very happy if not. On the basis that there are none more appearing, I'm going to conclude that I've covered the subject well enough for this afternoon. So, ladies and gentlemen, if we can be of assistance to you, please do go onto any one of our websites, UK, EU, or US, contact us, talk directly to the webinar auditors, webinar organizers, and we'll put together whatever we can to help you achieve what you want to achieve. Sorry, there are a couple more questions coming in, I think. Yep, okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all very much for being with us. I hope you stay secure and do come and join us on another webinar at some future point. Bye-bye.